includes a lot of secular elements. It includes students, it includes professionals, it includes workers, it includes farmers. So everybody is from all sectors of Egyptian society are here demanding a change of regime, because they have not had a real democracy. The elections that in particular the last elections that were held in Egypt were a complete farce. And the Mubarak party, the National Democratic Party, won a huge number of seats in the parliament, and the people know that wasn't what they voted for. So the people want not only a new regime, they are demanding and they are now working on a new constitution. The parliament has now been dissolved, and they're working on a way to elect a new parliament that is truly representative of the people. And here's what some of the protesters had to say about the parliament.
ولا نرضى بأقل من حل البرلمان المزور، البرلمان الذي شهدته أمريكا وشهدت تزويره، البرلمان الذي شهد الاتحاد الأوروبي على تزويره، البرلمان الذي شهد على تزويره الصغير والكبير، وهذه هي إرادة الأمة كما ترى حضرتك.
And the precise details of the regime that the people will create, of course, remains to be worked out. There's a lot of hard work that remains ahead to formulate a truly democratic government. But one of the features is that they will want to ensure that there will be free and fair elections, and this means elections that are not manipulated by moneyed interests, by corporate money or special interests. So here's what one of the protesters had to say about voting.
We want a democratic country. We want our right to vote. We want our vote to count. For the first time, we feel that it's coming. This time is coming. Our vote will count, and we will choose who to rule.
Some Western governments are fearful that a change in the regime in Egypt could bring Islamists into power. Could this hurt the minorities living in Egypt?
Well, first of all, historically, Egypt has been a country that has had a secular government, and it has a large minority of Coptic Christians. It also has a Jewish population. And these populations have always lived in Egypt in peace and harmony. Now recently, yes, there have been a few attacks, sectarian attacks, but these do not represent the wishes of the vast majority of the Egyptian people. There are a few extremists, but this is not the way that any future government in Egypt is going to be run. And as we can see here in the next video, this is what several of the protesters had to say about how Christians and Jews will fare in the future Egypt.
This is a country of all.
There is no hate between Muslim and Christian.
What if the Jews have always lived in Egypt safely, and Jews, Christians, Muslims, and other people have lived in Egypt safely? We never talked about that. We don't hate the Jews. We're always against Israel. Again, it's the government of Israel and what it does. It's not the Jews.
There are also concerns in the West, specifically about the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been banned under Mubarak's rule. But it's important to understand that the broad movement here is secular, and people want to have a government that is going to represent all the segments of Egyptian society. It's important to understand that the Brotherhood is not leading this movement. And the Brotherhood, in fact, has said that they will not run their own candidate for president. And they don't really want to lead. They want to be a part of the coalition that will be part of a future Egyptian democracy. And here's, again, what Nadia has to say
We are going to protect the elections, and of course, everybody has to be represented. I mean, it's not. We are not banning anyone. I mean, everybody has to go to the elections and have to run for the elections, and the people will rule. And let's assume the Islamic party or Islamic Brotherhood or movements, yes, would win the elections for one term, okay? And they don't work for our interests. We have seen it that we can go out on the streets and change all that.
Egypt has been the second largest recipient of U.S. military aid to Israel. $1.3 billion per year since 1979, and Egypt is a large recipient of development aid. Why has the U.S. government been giving Egypt so much money?
Well, this has all happened ever since the Camp David Accords in 1978. What those accords led to, of course, is the Egyptian peace treaty with Israel in 1979. And to get Egypt to sign that peace treaty, one of the factors was that the U.S. promised Egypt this huge amount of military aid. And of course, the peace treaty came with certain conditions, one of which is that Egypt would not place any of its military in the Sinai Peninsula. And in this case, what happened is that when the police force was withdrawn from the entire country, Israel actually became concerned about whether there would be a security risk in the Sinai Peninsula. And so it actually asked Egypt to move some of its military into the Sinai. It's a very interesting thing that Egypt needs to get permission under this treaty to place its own military on its own soil. Mm-hmm. And only Israel can give that permission. So this is an example of the kind of subservience that the Egyptian people are very frustrated with. Another thing that the people are concerned with, of course, is the blockade of the Gaza Strip. The blockade has been in force at varying levels, but it has become a full blockade ever since the Palestinian elections of January 2006. The paradox is that when the Palestinians exercise democracy, then Israel, with U.S. consent, goes in and prevents that democratically elected government by the Palestinians from ever taking office, despite the fact that international observers like Jimmy Carter have certified that those Palestinian elections were free and fair. So the reason that Egypt participates in this blockade of Gaza, what it does, Egypt prevents any ships from going from Egyptian waters directly into the waters of the Gaza Strip. It also controls the Rafah crossing, which is the only direct crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip that does not go through Israel.
But only people go through that crossing, right?
Only people.
Goods can't go through Rafah. They can only enter through what is
well,
the border with Israel.
The goods can enter directly through Israel. Goods do enter from Egypt to Gaza, but they must go through another crossing, which is the Al-Auja crossing, which actually goes into the Negev under Israeli control, and then from there into Gaza.
But those goods are very restricted, aren't they?
Those are very restricted, and there's only again those, because it's under Israeli control. Nothing that Israel does not want, such as construction materials, can go in. So anyway, the Egypt, the price of Egypt enforcing the blockade is this military aid. Now, there's a concern. Now, let's take a look at what some of the protesters had to say about Egypt's relationship with Israel.
Egypt has the second place after Israel of the countries that is giving money and military. You know all of this why? After Israel, yes, I know it, after support in the military and money, because the policy of Mubarak is a thing that Israel like. And I read the newspaper in Israel, they say that they are watching all the matter carefully. They care about this country and they didn't want Mubarak to leave.
So he's correct in saying that Israel has concerns about the Mubarak regime falling, but it's important to point out that what is likely to happen in a new Egyptian government is that the Egyptian government, a new Egyptian regime, is very likely to lift the blockade against Gaza. And of course, that's something that the Egyptian people are hoping for, the Palestinian people are hoping for.
People throughout the world are hoping for.
That's correct. And I mean, it's just simple social justice. It's a humanitarian right to be able for people to be able to move freely in and out of their country. But that does not mean that the peace treaty needs to be discontinued. The hope is that there will still be some kind of a peace treaty, because Egypt, after all, needs peace, and so this is a separate issue. We can have a peace treaty and at the same time lift the blockade. The other thing is that, of course, what has already happened is that the Egyptian government has lifted the restriction on Iranian ships going through the Suez Canal, and so we can already see that there are some changes, and I know that this has raised some alarm in Israel, but you know, every country has a right to trade, and I think that the new realities are slowly beginning to take shape in a new Egypt. The Egyptian military, of course, is very close to the U.S. military because of this aid, and you know, we don't know what the future will be, but I think a new government obviously is going to be looking after not the interests of the United States; it will be looking after the interests of Egypt and the Egyptian people.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully. President.
Well,
sorry.
There's also let's see what some of the Egyptians have think about the nature of U.S. interests vis-a-vis Egypt.
It's Israel, it's the oil, it's their interest in the region to keep those regimes and the people, you know, as stagnant as possible, because you know, they can, well, in a stagnant world like that, it's easier to manage your interests. You know, you have the upper ruling people are on your side, and the lower people are stagnant. So that's why they're supporting this regime for so long.
Another thing that the Egyptian people have seen is that in the first 4 days of the uprising, the police fired various types of munitions and tear gas at the protesters. And in this photo, you can see a tear gas shell that some of the protesters have picked up. And of course, it's clearly marked as being made in the United States. And so again, the people have questioned, you know, why does the United States government support this brutal regime and supply it with weapons that will only be used against the Egyptian people?
Exactly. President Hosni Mubarak tried to justify staying in office until his term ended, and he claimed that his resignation would bring chaos. However, you witnessed something totally different.
Yes, the people in the square unanimously said that, you know, they are there to take care of the country. It's their country, and they're going to protect it, and they are going to be nonviolent, and they in fact acted in a manner which is nonviolent. There was no looting of stores. In fact, people were there to protect the stores, ensure that that no glass was broken, and there was no vandalism. When the Mubarak government, in fact, pulled the police off the streets, they opened up all the jails and released the real criminals. And these real criminals, together with the secret police, went around vandalizing the neighborhoods. So if Mubarak was concerned about keeping order, that's not what his regime did. It in fact did the very opposite, which was to create chaos, to create fear. And it was the people who organized in the neighborhoods to defend their neighborhoods. Now, the Egyptian people, unlike here in America, don't have guns. And so what they did is they picked up sticks and metal rods and used these to defend their homes. Now, here's what some of the protesters had to say about the possibility of chaos and what the future might be.
We don't want the people to be afraid that it's going to be a chaos. It is not going to be a chaos. We are a people with 7,000 civilizations, 7,000 years of civilization. And you've seen it yourself. We have kept the square clean. We are sweeping the streets. We are protecting each other. With all those crowds getting on in the Tahrir square, you don't see anyone harassing somebody else. We don't see anyone who uses bad words. You haven't seen that. We are civilized people, and we are here just to tell him, please, enough. 30 years of corruption, enough. Yes. He has to go.
And people, in fact, did that. They organized themselves to clean up the square and clean up the streets around. As you can see in this photo, people just spontaneously, they brought their brooms and came to the square and started sweeping up and piling the rubbish up in neat piles in and around the square. So people were taking care of things.
And I understand that it wasn't just in Tahrir Square that this happened. It was all over, all throughout the country, that people were organizing among themselves, kind of already establishing their own government, people's government of taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we saw people sweeping the streets and directing the traffic, because there were no police to direct the traffic, and people volunteered to get in there and start putting things back in order. It was amazing to see this. And then when there were injuries, for example, on February 2nd and February 3rd, when the Mubarak supporters attacked, people again organized to treat the injured. And on February 2nd, there was one medical station in Tahrir Square. And on February 3rd, there were at least 6 medical stations. And as you can see in this video, these medical stations were treating a continuous stream of wounded.
This station is made by doctors from certainly one hospital, and other doctors contributed with us without being from a certain hospital, sent by a certain hospital. Okay, so it was a primary care station, and we have another hospital outside the square. Most of them are superficial contusions. Now we are just changing on the wounds that had been the injuries that was made yesterday, changing on them, making new dressings on them. But nothing new came to us today. We are still early. The supplies, we get some supplies from the hospital with us, and other supplies are coming from the people, common people, from their houses. Not from their houses, they are buying them from pharmacies and getting them. There are secure paths to the square, and there are security members from the people that are checking at each point. These are the supplements, how they come. Medications, antibiotics, analgesics, and we sutures, everything. We don't have any need for more supplements. I mean, there is no shortage of supplements. So we don't mind actually to give medical care to either side. We're sorry to say that there are both sides now, but we don't mind giving care to either sides.
And not only that, but as people began camping out in the square, there was a need to bring food in. And so people would just on their own go to the, what happened was that in the center of the city, most of the shops were closed. And it was difficult for traffic to get into the center of the city because of these squares being occupied by protesters. But if you go to the suburbs of the cities, many of the shops were still open. So people who lived in the suburbs, what they would do is they would buy food and bring it in with them. And so people would carry food into the square and share it with the people there. And that's how this protest was sustained day and night for 24 hours a day for 18 days. It was really an amazing sort of self-organization that was taking place here.
And you were seeing women and children out in the square.
Absolutely.
During this time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
right.
At nighttime also you were seeing the women out there?
Yes, there were women. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the women chanting. We've seen the women staying out late. Most of them weren't camping there, but the point is that they felt safe.
Which is rather new.
Yes.
That's not a common thing to happen.
It is not in a society like the Egyptian society where women tend to be more protected. Yeah.
Which leads us on to another point, is what has been the role of the workers in Egypt, in the uprising in Egypt?
Yes. Well, the role of workers actually has been one of the most underreported aspects of this. We've talked about the students, we've talked about the internet and Facebook. And by the way, some people have called this the Facebook revolution. It's very important to understand that Facebook and the internet are simply tools of communication. And revolutions are made by people. And so this is above all a people's revolution. This really comes from the grassroots. This was not dominated by any major political party. It was not dominated by any major organization, not even by a trade union. It was really driven by individual people working together in a truly grassroots manner. It's really almost a new model of uprising.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But the workers did play a crucial role. It's important to put this in context. Yeah. In the past decade, according to Joel Benin, who's a scholar on Egypt at Stanford University, there have been 3,000 worker protests and strikes during this 10-year period. And so the workers have not been idle. They have become increasingly politicized during this period of time, just because there has been, just like in this country, an attack on the rights of workers, attack on the rights of workers to organize, an attack on wages. The corporations are what they're trying to do is to lay off workers and instead of hiring workers directly, try to hire them through subcontractors, which is again a way of reducing their wages and benefits and making them harder to organize. But the workers of Egypt have been resisting this, and there are several cities in Egypt that are major industrial centers. El Mohalla, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge textile center. El Suez, which is known as Suez, is of course an industrial center for servicing the Suez Canal. And one thing that happened during these demonstrations was that the workers in El-Suez went on strike. And in Egypt, in addition to the normal economy, if you have agriculture, industry, and trade, there are two outstanding sectors that in addition provide an immense amount of revenue, not only for the economy, but for the government in terms of tax revenue. One of them is tourism. And tourism accounts for 6% of